Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors, and if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one is titled, "Neighbors repeatedly drove over my flowers and blocked my driveway. I got epic revenge." Hey everyone, I just wanted to make a quick note that this story takes place where I live in Malaysia and not the US as many other stories here. The culture I was brought up in was one that I was taught to always be very respectful of everyone around you. Because of that, it was hard to do something to really make me angry at somebody, and most of the time, even when I was angry, I would not do anything to retaliate out of respect for the other person. My neighbor though broke that line and caused me to have no respect for him, so all of that got thrown out of the window. You must be wondering what this guy could have done to get me this upset, and it really all started with his car. This guy seemed to value his car over everything and everybody. I had never even heard of a person like that before and was appalled at the things he would do. Mainly, when he did not have anywhere close to park, he would decide to block my driveway for the pure reasoning that he deserved it due to how nice his car was. That was no excuse to block someone's driveway, at least in my opinion, and stop them from using it themselves. Some days I would come home and have to find street parking because my driveway was not accessible because of this neighbor. He did more than just park on the street in the way like I have seen many people do before. No, he wanted to park sideways like it was street parking, but more in so that he was partially on my driveway and partially on the grass. I had always grown up with a sense of making one's home beautiful, and that applied to the outside of my home as well. My wife shared those values and planted a ton of flowers that were beautiful as well. It made all the family that came to visit us happy to see the pride that we took in our home. Not to mention that my wife loved those flowers more than anything else we had. She would spend so much time out there watering them and making sure they were healthy that I knew one day she would make a fantastic mother. I know this sounds unrelated, but the flowers were on the grass right near the driveway. The aftermath was when my neighbor put his car there, he ran over a bunch of the flowers, killing them. I even found tire marks and more dead flowers that would suggest he just drove across our entire lawn to his house. He did not even have grass, so I guess he did not care about damage to his property. I remember less about the details of what was destroyed and just that my wife was so upset because she had spent so much time planting and taking care of those flowers. That was what crossed the line for me when it came to not respecting him anymore. He could not make my wife upset and get away with it just because I was taught to be respectful to everyone. I went to him and told him that he could not just park blocking my driveway and had to find normal parking like everyone else. He actually laughed in my face and told me that his car was worth more than my life and he would do what he wanted. I pointed out that he too had a driveway, but he said that he needed that for his wife's car and that he was not going to try and make two fit. Even though he probably could have. It was clear that there was no way to reason with this guy, and instead I just needed to get revenge to teach him some manners and to respect me. Like many other places, it is illegal where I live to block someone else's driveway like that, so after all this time of doing nothing, I got his fancy car towed. It felt good to show him that I was not someone that could just be stepped all over. I hoped that would stop the problems, but instead they just grew as he now hated me. He tried to dig some of my yard up, claiming that it was on his side of the property and that I could not do anything about it. So even more flowers got destroyed and I had to get even bigger revenge on the neighbor. It was not actually planned to be revenge when I went to find out from someone where the property lines were, and then I would just make him stop. So what I did not know before was that I owned a good chunk of land that we both thought was his property. The best part being was that where his driveway was belonged to me, and that was when I knew what I was going to do. I thought it was fair that since he liked to take my driveway away from me, I was going to take his away. I got a fence built right where the line was and then dug up what used to be his driveway. In that spot I set up a nice spot that would be perfect for my wife to set up a new garden. It was another area and she could have complete control to plant anything she wanted there to make up for what got destroyed by the neighbor. Really, that was all I wanted at the end of the day, were the two things that ended up happening. The most important was that my wife was happy again and was not having her flowers be destroyed. The second thing being that neighbor learned that I can only be pushed so far before I push back. He did try to block my driveway one more time and got towed again. He yelled at me for it, but I paid him no mind and told him I would keep doing it if he kept blocking me. After that, he did not try to block my driveway, and now without one of his own, he would have to find parking in the street or build himself a new driveway. I don't think that I'll be having any more problems with him though, and I can go back to my normal lifestyle. So far, he has been the only person to push me far enough to stop being respectful and peaceful to everyone around me. While I did enjoy getting revenge, I hope that it is not something that I will ever have to do again. I hope you all agree that he deserved what I did to him and that maybe in the future he will not do such things to people. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say that was definitely a genius response to this awful entitled neighbor. Props to OP. And either way, if you still enjoy the Neighbors from Hell stories, I would really appreciate it if you could also post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support my channel. Thank you so much in advance. And the next one is titled Revenge on the Neighbor. For a long time, our neighbor has had a grudge on me and my family. I later found out it was because we did not greet him every time we walked past him on the sidewalk. He is an older man with a sick wife, so he has a bucket on the second story to pee in at night so they don't have to walk all the way downstairs. After he got a grudge on us, he started emptying his bucket in our garden and terrace, and sometimes he would pour it under our gate, other times it would just be thrown over the gate and get on all the furniture. I found out about this one night that I got home late and there was a big puddle all over the entrance of the garden and the terrace, which I thought was weird because it was summer and it had not rained in a week. This went on for another month or so, where our neighbor would do this a couple times every week. Well, I finished the class I took extra this summer and finally had some vacation, so I didn't have to get up early in the morning for a while. So then I thought I would be sitting on the terrace just chilling, reading a book or something. However, then came the day I was hoping for. I heard his clocks walk across the street and I looked through the small cracks in the fence and lo and behold, it was that neighbor with a bucket in his hands. So I was just about to yell when I thought I would try something. So I waited for him to get ready to throw the pee over the fence. As soon as he started making the throwing motion, I started yelling at him and what I hoped for happened. He got such a shock that he accidentally threw the pee straight up into the air, splashing it all over himself. He quickly ran back into his house and I walked in to call the police because now we finally have a witness of what he has been doing for such a long time. They came and talked to him. I don't know what they said to him, all I know is that he has not done anything to us since. He even greets us now when we walk past him. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I'm wondering, who needs enemies if you can have neighbors like this? I gotta say, I am truly happy at the moment that my neighbors seem really nice and I've had no issues with them so far. However, there is still potential for trouble because the house on the right to us is currently still more or less empty. However, I've heard that people bought the house already, but it seems like they are just investors and maybe they don't even want to live here. Let's just hope they don't rent it out as an Airbnb or something, because that could mean trouble in the future. And the next one is titled, Karen wants all the parking available. So, Karen has lived next door to us for 13 years in a duplex apartment. The former owners of my house also previously owned the duplex till they sold it years ago to Karen's sister, a slightly less Karen-esque Karen. When they owned it, they put in a 2-car parking area in front between their house and the next door apartment. They did not drive, so the parking was mostly used by Karen when she later moved in. She is a selfish, petty woman and a user of people. She used the previous owner of our home to the day he died. There is also a reason to believe her selfishness led to his death, but that's a whole other story. After he died, the rep for his estate made her get all her stuff out of his house, which she had been storing there. When he died and we eventually moved in, she tried to use us as well, including trying to store her stuff again, but we knew about her and never let it happen. So we had a bad time with her from the start. Anyway, she also early on made a point of claiming the property line was right up against our house. This was obviously wrong because that is not how property lines work, but we had no reason to argue at the time. Eventually we had a baby, and with the baby room being near the front, we found it easier to carry a baby/car seat/diaper bag out the front, so we asked her if we could park on our side of the 2-car space. Not only did she refuse, she began to park down the center of it just so there was no room for us to get into it. Karen not only has these 2 spots, but also a 1 to 2 car covered space in back, all for her one single car. However, we only have a single spot around the back for both of our cars, so my wife was parking on the street. Eventually, we got to looking closer at the space and noticed it was practically right up against our house. Remembering what she had claimed in the past, I began to look into the property line. According to a detailed city map on the City Hall website, our property line was down the middle of our houses and lined up with the middle of the 2-car space. I found that Friday, and the city brought up that same map to confirm with us this was correct the following Monday. So we started parking there again anytime she was gone. For the whole week she began to park not only down the middle, but sometimes diagonal across both spaces. She kept this up all week before finally banging on our door on Friday. As soon as she heard us mention the city, says the property line is down the middle, she stormed off stomping and angry, saying she'll be talking to the landlord and city on Monday in a very "you'll be speaking to my lawyer" tone. Fine, the city will tell her the same they told us, and the landlord has no say over our property. A calm weekend. Then on Tuesday, our other neighbor, Jimmy, in the other side of the duplex, parked his trailer in our spot. We had always gotten along with Jimmy alright, as he was the local helpful old guy/lawnmower/handyman. He is also basically the maintenance guy for the duplex. He says the landlords asked him to do that, but we explained the situation and told him it is best not to get in the middle of this fight, as he knows how Karen gets about things and this won't end easily or soon. They also had him measure the distance across their property and place stakes in the yard marking the line, which was about a foot from our house. He showed me where he started the measurement, and that also did not line up with city mapping, so it's no wonder the measurements were off. Nonetheless, he agreed and moved the trailer for us. A few days later, Jimmy, someone else, and the duplex owner's husband, who is a male Karen, are walking around our properties talking and doing measurements. No one ever contacted me about this, but I happened to notice them and went out to see what was up. As we are talking to them, the third man eventually implies he is a city worker, but he did not introduce himself as such. His vehicle did not look like a city vehicle, and he was just as cocky, condescending, and talking down to us as the duplex owner. He confirms their measurements were correct and the property line is a foot from my house. So he seemed pretty clearly to be a contact of the owner pretending to be city to shut us up. We went to the city the next day to confirm. They sent someone out. As it turns out, he was from them. His actions were simply from his own frustration dealing with these Karens for the last few days. It turns out the online city map is more a guideline and not fully accurate. They should not have used it to confirm the property line to us early on. But the big thing that they all seem to have missed from his visit was his mention that the parking spots were on the city property in front of the sidewalk, so none of it is on either property. He cannot deny either property from parking there, and if there continue to be issues, the city will clear out both spots, since as city property, neither spot is legally supposed to be there. So therefore, we continue to park there, and when we come back one day, we find the Karens have placed railroad ties, with metal spikes to keep them there, in the middle of both spots, only leaving space in the middle for one spot which we parked in. The owners drive by while we are there and still claim it is their land, which we tell them it is city property and we have as much right to park there. Eventually, the spikes disappear, but the RR ties are still in place. This feels like baiting me to mess with their property, the RR ties, so I contact the city about what I can do. They say that as city property, it falls into the same category as something being in the road. If it impedes public access, we can move it even if the spikes returned. So I move it and it comes back, and I move it and it comes back. I caught Jimmy moving them back the second time and told him what the city said. The owners called the cops. The cops took our statements, but the ties never went back into the space, so I imagine they were told to stop it. A day or two later, Jimmy comes by and apologizes for his part in this. He was basically following orders from the Karens and did not want to lose his place. It turns out, from his story at least, that the Karen who owns the place finally decided enough was enough and told her husband to stop it. And our neighbor Karen, her sister, was told to either let us in or park in the back. Now, we have been able to park without too much issues, though she still parks fairly close to the middle, leaving us barely any room. Part of that is likely due to the ties being along her side now and her car being low to the ground. She has a Lincoln Town Car and we got a Ford Explorer. Though I am sure it is mostly just her bending the rules of what she was told as closely as she can. We would say something, but she refuses to speak to us at all at Thin Point, which is still another win in our book. The next one is a fantastic HOA story. It is titled The $1 Million HOA Scandal. It started with the misplaced flower pots. Soon after John Fremont arrived in Goodview Villa Homes, a community for older adults in a Kansas City suburb, the homeowner association disputed the placement of his satellite dish. It cited him for parking cars in his driveway overnight and placing a St. Francis statue in a flower bed. He was later written up for a dead cat in a window well, which Mr. Fremont suspects was planted by a neighborhood enemy. Things went downhill from there. After he installed a decorative shine-high wall around a plant bed on the side of his house, saying it would enhance the curb appeal, the HOA ordered him to remove it because it had not been approved by an architectural review committee. Mr. Fremont said he actually had the needed approval. Check the rules. 7 years after he moved in, the HOA and Mr. Fremont are still fighting over the decorative wall in court with no end in sight. The dispute has consumed nearly $1 million in legal fees, the most expensive active HOA case of this type in the country, according to experts keeping track of such things. Am I throwing away a lot of good money? Mr. Fremont, a retired owner of an architectural consulting business, asked rhetorically. I have to do the right thing, and this is the right thing. HOAs collect monthly fees from residents to help take care of maintenance and other upkeep. Their approach to enforcing community rules, especially on seemingly petty matters, can spur philosophical standoffs that the principals see as a battle of order versus chaos, freedom versus oppression. Mr. Fremont said he did not receive anything in writing saying he could not build a decorative wall and that he decided to go to the Met to protect his right to do it. It is standing up for my constitutional rights, he said. He called the HOA board a dictatorship that polices residents for any infraction of its 50 pages of covenants, conditions and restrictions. Board member and some residents said that they are the victim of a rogue neighbor. We would just like for this to go away, said Bob Collins, 77, a retired machinery executive. The guy just didn't comply with the rules like the rest of us have. Niels Mortensen, the current HOA president, said the association has to enforce its rules. The minute you start saying, oh well, that's not a big deal, then before you know it, nothing is a big deal, Mr. Mortensen said. I view this as a test case. Either our declarations are enforceable or they are not. Another contingent of residents supports Mr. Fremont, asserting they have been mistreated by the HOA board. They have bullied for so long, so many of the residents, said Coney Morris, 66, whose complaints include the association not allowing a decorative bench in her front yard. Mr. Freeman and the homeowner association have each spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees on the wall dispute. Every now and then, someone comes along in the HOA membership who wants to bug the system, said Larry Sabo, president of HOA Member Services LLC, a Los Angeles-based resource guide for associations. Mr. Freeman, 66, said he was not looking for trouble when he moved back from Iowa to his boyhood home of Kansas City in 2012. He liked the look and location of Goodview Villa, where the HOA handled tasks like lawn maintenance for the mostly retired residents of its 153 well-tended homes. Mr. Freeman was given a list of the HOA rules at the closing and initialed it, but said he did not realize what it was. While still unpacking in his 3-bedroom home, Mr. Freeman said he got a phone call from an HOA manager that he was in violation of several rules. Leaving his vehicles parked in the driveway overnight instead of inside the garage, and improperly putting a St. Francis statue out front and ceramic flower pots on the driveway. He argued that the decorations were temporarily in the wrong place as part of his move and the garage was full of his belongings waiting to go inside. When he installed a satellite dish next to his home in the backyard, the HOA advised him it had to be in the middle of the yard, he said. Mr. Freeman refused to move it, arguing the placement of the dishes falls under federal control. An attorney for the developer issued a warning the HOA would sue to make him comply. Your non-compliance with the covenants leaves negative impressions with prospective purchasers, lawyer Michael White wrote in a July 2012 letter. Mr. Freeman responded by hiring an attorney of his own. The board dropped the demand after it was advised by the Federal Communications Commission that the HOA had no jurisdiction over satellite dishes. By December, a new HOA board decided to waive fines of about $3,500 for Mr. Freeman's violations, said Don Blem, its president then. We wanted to start off on a clean slate, said Mr. Blem, 73, a retired telecommunications manager. The fight instead just got more vicious. Some months later, Mr. Blem was notified by a neighbor that Mr. Freeman had begun construction of a low, roughly 70-foot long faux stone wall wrapping around an area planted with flowers and shrubs on one side of his house. The HOA ordered Mr. Freeman to take it down. Mr. Freeman retained a second attorney to file suit in State District Court in Olathe. The HOA filed a counterclaim. After a one-day trial, Judge Gerald Elliott in January 2014 ruled Mr. Freeman had not shown evidence his wall project was approved and ordered him to seek approval through an HOA-managed committee, which declined it. Courts have generally supported the idea that HOA rules are enforceable contracts as long as they are applied fairly and don't abridge civil rights. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Mr. Freeman said. The stupidity of this whole thing amazed me. Mr. Freeman, who, like his neighbors, pays monthly fees of $185 to the HOA, retained a third attorney who filed motions alleging the association and its committee had acted in bad faith because they had not treated Mr. Freeman the same as other homeowners. The judge denied the motions and Mr. Freeman appealed to the Kansas Court of Appeals, which in 2016 sent the case back to the lower court for a new hearing on the issue of what constituted good faith. The case dragged into 2017 as Mr. Freeman's lawyer, Eldon J. Shields, asked the HOA to document every landscaping project at Goodview Villa since the subdivision opened in 2006. In reviewing the more than 4,000 pages of documents, Mr. Shields said he discovered dozens of other landscaping walls in the subdivision with approval. An attorney for the HOA, Lawrence L. Ferry, said many were not comparable because they were minor projects that consisted of limestone rocks lying in a mulch bed. A new judge, Rhonda Mason, ruled last year that Mr. Freeman had been dealt with unfairly, but also failed to obtain approval for the wall and ordered him to pay a $25,000 fine to the HOA. The HOA appealed and Mr. Freeman said he plans to as well. As of October, HOA records show it has spent a total of $388,000 on the case, with $35,000 more budgeted for 2019, while people familiar with the matter said Mr. Freeman has spent about $400,000. That is close to the market value of his home. Dear ripe stars, unfortunately we have reached the end of the video. But fortunately, you get to see more of Disney. I think you can hear her. I already gave her some boop boop kisses. She really likes to do that, like we basically touch our noses. Oh, Disney. And I think her chin is getting better because now she cannot scratch anything anymore. So yeah, that's definitely good news, and then soon she won't need the sunflower anymore, even though it looks really cute, right, Disney? Yeah, and sometimes because I like to put my feet and legs under there, sometimes she just comes under the under the blanket. The little Disney cuddle monster house cat. Maybe we need to... I think they're okay. Like, we recently trimmed her nails. They should be fine. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching, and I see you again soon. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.